The Cold War Redux, NATO versus Russia. The Cold War was a period of intense geopolitical tension between the Western Bloc, which was led by the United States, and the Eastern Bloc, which was led by the Soviet Union. The tensions between these two sides lasted from the end of World War II until the dissolution of the Soviet Union in 1991. The Cold War shaped the world we live in today and influenced international relations for decades. Although the Cold War officially ended over 2 decades ago, recent developments have led some to wonder if we are witnessing a new version of the Cold War. The conflict between NATO and Russia is one of the most prominent examples of this new Cold War. NATO, or the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, is a military alliance that was formed in 1949 to counter the Soviet Union. Its members include the United States, Canada, and most of Western Europe. Russia, on the other hand, is a former superpower that emerged from the rubble of the Soviet Union in 1991. It has been embroiled in various conflicts with NATO and its member states for years. One of the main sticking points between NATO and Russia is the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. In 2014, Russia annexed Crimea, a peninsula in Ukraine. This annexation led to a bloody conflict between Ukrainian government troops and Russian-backed separatists in eastern Ukraine. Since then, the conflict has simmered on, with occasional outbreaks of violence. NATO has taken a strong stance against Russia in the conflict, imposing sanctions and deploying troops to Eastern Europe. Another point of contention is NATO's expansion into Eastern Europe. After the fall of the Soviet Union, NATO began expanding into what had been the Soviet sphere of influence. This expansion has been a major source of tension between NATO and Russia. In recent years, NATO has continued to expand, adding Montenegro as its newest member in 2017. This move has been met with stern warnings from Moscow. The recent US election has also added fuel to the fire. Many in Russia viewed US President Joe Biden's election as a threat. Biden has taken a hard line on Russia in the past and has continued that stance since taking office. This has led to increased tensions between Russia and the United States. The recent Russian troop buildup near the Ukrainian border has been cited as a response to this perceived threat. So, are we witnessing a new version of the Cold War? The answer is both yes and no. Yes, there are tensions between NATO and Russia that are reminiscent of the Cold War era. The conflict in Ukraine, NATO expansion, and recent political developments have all contributed to these tensions. However, this is not the same Cold War that dominated international relations for 5 decades. The world has changed since then, and so has Russia. During the Cold War, the US and Soviet Union were the only superpowers in the world. Today, there are multiple powers competing for influence, including China. Russia is still a major power, but it is not the same superpower it was during the Cold War. Its economy has been hurt by sanctions and low oil prices, and it no longer has the same level of military and technological might. Furthermore, the world is more interconnected than ever before. The internet and social media have made it much harder for governments to control information and shape public opinion. This has made traditional methods of propaganda and disinformation less effective. Additionally, the threat of nuclear war, which loomed over the Cold War, is not as prominent today. That being said, the tensions between NATO and Russia are still a cause for concern. The conflict in Ukraine has already claimed thousands of lives, and any escalation could have disastrous consequences. Furthermore, the rise of right-wing nationalism and authoritarianism in many parts of the world has made it easier for leaders to play on people's fears and stoke these tensions. In conclusion, the conflict between NATO and Russia is a clear example of the new Cold War that is taking shape in the world today. While it is not the same as the Cold War of the past, it is still a cause for concern. The stakes are high, and any misstep could have disastrous consequences. It is up to the leaders of both sides to find a way to resolve these tensions and prevent a new Cold War from becoming a reality.